Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I do have cinnamon in my coffee this morning, and I also have, and I think I came up with a good word for it, I have today a potpourri of information for you, and I did find something on Polysign that I do not believe has been seen yet, and I'm going to show that to you, and a couple of interesting tie-ins and a couple of interesting things that are really lay things out about what is upon us really at any time now in 2020, and it relates to Polysign custody and all of this. But let's start out. I found a clip. It's a Roger Vir interview from May 21st of 2020. This kind of spells out what we've been saying all along about XRP in relation to Bitcoin and different things. But there's a 2-minute clip here that I think you'll find interesting. And don't forget, Roger Vir was one of the first people at Ripple. He actually funded Ripple in the beginning with Jed McCaleb, and then he paid David Schwartz's salary in the beginning, is the way he tells the story. But listen to what he says in this interview about Bitcoin and speeds and different things.
Because of flaws, do you think that with those things remaining, Bitcoin BTC can remain the #1 position on CoinMarketCap in 5 to 10 years?
It seems really, really unlikely to me. There's so many other chains that give such a much better experience. Like in the last week or two, the 4 coins that I've made transactions on chain for, the Bitcoin BTC. In fact, I had a transaction stuck the other day again, and I had to pay $30 in Bitcoin Cash to the BTC.com mining pool to include my Bitcoin transaction in one of their blocks because it had been stuck for like 6 hours. And It was a pretty big transaction. So I paid $30 in Bitcoin Cash to this Bitcoin mining pool to include the BTC transaction in one of their next blocks. And so if you have a Bitcoin transaction stuck, you can pay with Bitcoin Cash. And if that's not another warning sign, I don't know what is, that people are paying miners in Bitcoin Cash to guarantee that they'll include your Bitcoin transaction in one of their next blocks, like another disaster. Anyhow, the other coins I also made transactions in Bitcoin Cash, fast, cheap, and reliable, fantastic. Ethereum, pretty darn cheap, super fast, fantastic. And then I made a Ripple transaction recently as well. Super fast, super cheap again. Although I hear from people that are running Ripple full nodes or Ethereum full nodes, that's a lot of work, and they're a bit more resource intensive, which is fine, because for the end user there that's making the Ethereum or Ripple transaction, like, man, I was impressed with how fast it is. And like, I love the Bitcoin.com wallet. Like, we have a fantastic team working on it. I was testing out the Trust wallet from Binance the other day. That's a slick wallet, and it supports quite a few different cryptocurrencies in there. And I made the Ethereum and the Ripple transactions from that Trust wallet, and like, wow, that was a good experience, and puts Bitcoin to shame. Like, you can, when you compare a Bitcoin transaction with a Ripple or an Ethereum transaction, or just about any other coin at this point, like, Bitcoin has the name recognition and the brand awareness, and it's $10,000 a coin, so people get excited about it because of those things. But anybody that makes a payment with it, like, the best thing that could possibly happen for Bitcoin Cash is for people to make a Bitcoin transaction, then make a Bitcoin Cash transaction, and then they'll.
So this is the stuff we've been saying for a long time, and he also, by the way, he also tweeted the other day the Bitcoin white paper, and it specifically in the white paper talks about how it's supposed to be electronic cash, and all of these Bitcoin people know that it's not. But I thought that was an interesting clip, hearing it from someone else. Now, James Rule has sent me something else interesting, and I wanted to give him credit. He had shown me some documents yesterday, and then he sent me this one today. And this is about Polysign. This is showing you all of the Polysign investors. And remember, folks, for those of you that don't know, Polysign is institutional custody, that is, and they've got on their website that it is designed to scale into the trillions, okay? Now, we've known for a long time that Polysign, the reason this is such a big deal is because all of the major money, it can't come in until the major Wall Street people, this money cannot come in until there are really trusted institutional custody solutions. And and I've shown you all the ties to the traditional custodians. Just one example off the top of my head, two of the largest investors in SBI Holdings are Northern Trust and State Street, two of the largest custodians in the traditional financial world. Okay, SBI Holdings owns 10.5% of Ripple. You know all of this. Okay, so Polysign, and we've been told Polysign will open in 2020. Polysign was started by David Schwartz, Arthur Brito, two of the people that created XRP, right? So you can't look away from Polysign. Polysign, they've said that it's going to happen in 2020. When it comes out, this is one of the most anticipated things that there is. Well, these are the companies that are invested in Polysign. I talked about CRC Inventors. That's China Rock. I don't think it's a coincidence that you have a Chinese venture capital firm. Yes, they are located in San Francisco, but they also have an offices in China. I know Beijing is one. But these are the other people that are invested in into this, and I wanted to tie them all together and show you a little more about how all this works. So the first guy I wanted to look up was Greg Aris, I guess is how he runs Ride Ventures, which is a New York venture capital firm. He's also an advisor to China Rock Ventures. Okay, so now. And you're going to see here how all this ties together. So he's an advisor, and then let's see what else, anything interesting. He was very, it looks like he was just like an associate with, like almost like an intern with Goldman Sachs. So nothing too interesting on his resume other than he's an advisor to China Rock, okay? But the next guy is also one of, Kilowatt Capital is run by this guy, Niraj Mehta. Okay. Now this guy's interesting. I went around and started looking for information on this guy, and I saw two interesting things. The first thing is I think he's from India, and I believe that I think he's a Buddhist from you can tell he's a little different in terms of, he's a little mystic with some of the things he talks about. You'll see him in one video and he'll have long hair like he's been on some kind of sabbatical or something. And then you'll see him next time and he'll look like this. But he's obviously a deep thinker. In fact, he's got a manifesto that I couldn't zero in on. Niraj Mehta manifesto. The first thing here, I can barely read it. It says, to advance the digital currency industry as an investor, advisor, and mentor while spreading something values, inclusion, connectedness, and global consciousness. So anyway, but as I was looking down his LinkedIn, I found something else interesting. Kilowatt Capital. And then this is interesting. He was a computer science and engineering student at Auburn University. And here's what makes that interesting. The digital asset investor also went to Auburn University. But what makes it even more interesting is that he was at Auburn University almost at the exact time that I was there. You can't make this stuff up. I was there I graduated high school in 1992. I started that summer. I graduated, I believe 96 is when I graduated. So he was at Auburn University while I was there, which I thought was interesting. Now, I want to show you a video. This is him right here. I want to show you this video. Now it's I think there's a good 4 minutes here that I'm going to show you, but here's what he's about to tell you about. This is back on April 30th of 2018. And what he's talking about in this video is he's laying out for you that, look, traditional finance is not coming until we have this custody thing solved. And I don't know exactly when he invested in Polysign, but it was either around this time or a little bit after this that he invested in Polysign, which is the most secretive institutional custody solution that there is. And we showed you the other day that the people to go work there have to have U.S. security clearance on top of that, folks. Okay? All right. So listen to what he says. He lays it out and tells you not only what what must happen, but what will happen in this space once this is solved. And we know it's going to finally be solved this year.
So, you mentioned custodianship. I do think that is an absolutely non-trivial factor in the world of crypto. Because if you look at the hedge fund business, there's about 3.2 trillion today, of which almost all of it is custodied by 10 firms. I mean, this is literally because these are the prime brokers that custody almost all those money. And so I think it's a very naive and misguided assumption to think that one could just hop onto that list and create a comfort level for a typical U.S. pension fund and say, okay, you now are allowed to custody our assets, because it took so long to get, a Goldman, a Morgan, a JP Morgan, a UBS, a Credit Suisse, a Deutsche, BNY Mellon, or a State Street onto that list. So I think point number one is custody is a big deal. And it's a very complicated problem because you have technology product challenges, which are indicative of most of the offerings in the market today. You have regulatory challenges, which vary by each country. And in the US, the SEC hasn't formally given guidance for qualified custodianship. And to be very precise, for those of you not familiar, in the US, if you have $150 million of assets as a fund manager by the end of a given year, you have to register with the government and to become a registered investment advisor. And you have until March 31 to be compliant and to fill out something called a Form ADV. One of the questions on the Form ADV says, who is your custodian? And that means qualified custodian. You can't custody your own assets. And there were a couple funds that were crypto funds that were close to crossing that in the States that got exemptions last year because of Bitcoin and Ethereum not being considered securities. By the end of this year, we anticipate quite a few that will be over that number that are going to need a solution to be compliant by Q1 of next year. So this is a very important real-time exercise in the United States that is getting worked out as we speak. So the SEC, everyone is waiting on guidance of what is a qualified custodian. Do you need a trust charter? Do you need to be a broker-dealer? And so that's kind of one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is actually client requirements, because all the different clients that are going to be market participants may have very different needs between a crypto fund, a hedge fund, an institution, a liquid publicly traded ETF, or a miner or an exchange. Frankly, they're all going to have different needs of time, service, layers of security. So I personally think the custody problem is going to get worked out in the next 4 to 6 quarters, but it's not going to happen overnight. And it's going to be a function of regulatory guidance, another half a dozen entrants coming into the market, and everyone figuring out what the right way to tackle this problem is. But, I mean, to give you an idea of what's at stake, out of the $3.2 trillion in hedge funds today, we estimate less than 1% of that is actually holding some crypto assets. But estimates now are 10 to 15% of the principals that work at and own the hedge fund firms are actively trading or owning crypto. So just that, but they are prevented from owning it from their funds because of the commingled vehicles and the structural bottlenecks we just talked about. So just that alone is hundreds of billions of demand. So I think some point next year, we're going to begin to see the floodgates open to institutional capital in crypto. And everyone's been talking about it right now, but we're not even scratching the surface of the water being safe. And when it happens, it's going to happen, and it's going to catch the world off guard, because no one will have understood the depth of what 10, 100 billion of fiat coming into these exchanges or OTC markets is going to do to the price of the entire crypto ecosystem. So, yeah, this is something that I think is an absolute non-trivial factor.
How about that? He just laid it out for you about it. That's about as clear. Now, this is not some Joe Schmo. This guy's running a venture capital firm, and he's an investor in Polysign. And we know that Polysign is going to be a part of solving this problem, not next year, this year. And we know that Polysign is, and I'll show you some more things now, but now, I wanted to show you this just because I ran into it. I was going around on the China Rock on their venture capital firm's website, and I went to their blog and I was looking around just saw a few things that I thought would be interesting to show you. The first one is this. This is these guys. They were having a mobility roundtable back in April of 2018. If you look in, this is in their office. You can see the Ripple logo. These are, I guess, the companies that they have funded. I just thought this was an interesting picture to show you. So Ripple, these guys are all about Ripple. Now, let me show you something even more interesting. What you're looking at here is from their blog. This is a recap, their Ventures Founders Conference 2018. Okay. Now, this tells me that and let's go back. Let me see if it tells you when on here, when these companies invested in, I guess December 2018 is when they invested in Polysign. I guess that may not be right. It was because it was before. Let's see, this is October 30th, 2018. I guess they were, but anyway, let's go down and look at this. What you're seeing here is their founders conference. And as you go down below each one of these pictures, it shows you, who's leading these different sessions and whatnot. And as you get down to about not that one, not that one, not that one, not that one, that one. Group V Enterprise, led by Jack McDonald, CEO of Polysign. That right there would be Jack McDonald, I'm assuming, because I don't see him he's got to be this guy right here that we can't see. But Jack McDonald is the CEO of Polysign. So very clearly Polysign. Now remember, this is this venture capital firm, part of what they do is plug companies into China. And that is fascinating. Because not only, so the CEO of Polysign is there running one of their little groups. And I'll take you further, but I didn't want to miss this. Another thing I found on their website is this about Hedera Hashgraph. I don't want to ignore anything that I think are really good projects. Google Cloud announces to work with Hedera Hashgraph to support the next generation of distributed ledger technology. All right, the next thing I wanted to show you is this. This is the portfolio of CRC Inventors. Notice that they have Brad Garlinghouse on it, and then they have the CEO of Polysign is on the page. These are the people they're highlighting. These guys know that they've hit a grand slam with Ripple and Polysign. But look at who else they're involved with. They own a portion of equities in. They own a portion of Ripple. They own some of Polysign, Global ID. This is Greg Kidd's Global ID. Remember, Chris Larson and Karen Gifford, who used to be with Ripple, are on the board of Global ID. Everything's connected, folks. Everything. All right. I Am Legion sent me this yesterday. You'll remember I was talking about, and remember, all this is connected. Global ID is Greg Kidd. And then I Am Legion sends me this after I showed yesterday. I was talking about how Greg Kidd had tweeted this out, this SSI self-sovereign identity incubator, which led me to Sovereign, this organization. And then I Am Legion made me aware of this. What is Hyperledger Indy? The Sovereign Foundation open sourced the code base used to create Sovereign Network and contributed the initial code to Hyperledger Indy, a project dedicated to blockchain under Linux Foundation umbrella. Hyperledger Indy is a distributed ledger purpose-built for decentralized identity. Now, this is Hyperledger Identity. Let's see if I can get to this point right here.
Driving the projects collaborate in an open and neutral environment. Hyperledger Indy, one of the frameworks in the Hyperledger Greenhouse, is a distributed ledger that provides tools, libraries, and reusable components for creating and using independent decentralized identities. As the world becomes more interconnected, individuals are disclosing personal information, creating multiple usernames and passwords, and leaving digital traces across platforms. Indy represents the idea of a self-sovereign identity, which would dispose of the need for multiple logins and passwords. Rooted on a distributed ledger, this digital identity interoperates across different domains, applications, and organizational silos. Additionally, Indy puts identity control in the hands of the user, not the organization. Individuals will not have to rely on big organizations to store and share their personal data. Instead, the user controls what data they want to provide access to and for how long. Indy provides strong privacy guarantees because private data is not written on the ledger, but exchanged over peer-to-peer encrypted connections. A unique ID for each relationship ensures that data doesn't leak from one relationship to the next. Indy also ensures that both individuals and institutions always know who they are dealing with. Companies can store less personal data and spend less time and money trying to protect it. This combination of privacy and trust enables meaningful interactions. By providing a solution for digital credentials that preserves privacy, Indy makes self-sovereign identities possible and practical for individuals, institutions, and Internet of Things. Get started with Hyperledger Indy today by downloading the source code, accessing the documentation, and joining our community from our website.
All right. So now, as we've talked about before on this channel, look, if you're looking for digital assets or anything in this space to invest in, go to Hyperledger. It's hyperledger.org, because this is really the heartbeat of this whole space. If it's a member here, then these guys are in the game. Like Accenture, American Express, you see all these names, DTCC, IBM, JP Morgan, all these guys are in the game. Now, but if you scroll through here, you'll see everybody else that's in the game as well. But if people are not involved, there's the CME group. If people are not involved in this Hyperledger, there's digital asset, then I'd be very careful as far as what I'm investing in. But R3's on here, Ripple's on here. You've got the NTT data we've talked about. Now, I want to show you someone who has just joined, right? Michael at VAL5 Links provided me with this. Cardano Development Company will be joining the Hyperledger project, and W3C focusing on the enterprise use cases as a part of its bid for the next 5 years. Now, I want to say something about Cardano right here. We've talked about Ethereum, and we've talked about Ethereum 2.0, and I talked about this. I was talking to my father yesterday about this. So let's pretend that you are a company that's wanting to create your own token or whatever. Are you going to use Ethereum that they are replacing? Ethereum is proof of work. They're replacing it with Ethereum 2.0. But nobody can give you any kind of real definitive answer as to when that's going to happen, how the transition specifically is going to go. Nobody. Meanwhile, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been watching this Charles Hoskinson, the guy who's created Cardano, who left Ethereum to work on Cardano. And his whole mission in life was to create a better version of Ethereum, a better smart contract platform than Ethereum. This guy has been doing nothing but working with academics, PhDs, and engineers on creating the ultimate smart contract platform for the last few years. And now you're starting to see this company making moves. They're joining Hyperledger, W3C. Watch out, folks. Don't be surprised if you see Cardano come out of nowhere, because Ethereum just doesn't have it together. And that's the fact, Jack. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe and hit the like button. And tell your friends and family that don't be surprised if Cardano is a dark horse and comes out of nowhere. Thanks for listening.